Hello YouTube, I Fix It All here, Team I Fix It All. I thought I would do a little video on how I solder. Um, there's a few little rules you need to follow when soldering, but you got to have flux. You just can't do good solder work without flux. This is just going to be basic wire splicing, but if you want to know what a good wire splice is, Google the term Western Union splice. And it's almost self-locking, but when I can join two wires together, I end up using something along the lines of a Western Union. So I've got myself I'm doing a part 2 of this wire can project here. I'm adding these two wires together here, so I'll just go ahead and shoot a little demo of how I splice these two together and keep it low profile and keep it reasonable for heat shrink. I won't be adding heat shrink on these because the purpose of my wire can is to pull out a segment of wire, cut it, and use it. If I pull a segment out and there's a splice on it, then I'll slip the heat shrink on it then. So that's the way I'm handling it. I just don't want to put the time and effort into heat shrinking everything because I don't know what the application is going to be for that wire in the future. It may need to be double, triple heat shrinked. I don't know. I'll just address heat shrink as I use the wire. So here's a pink yellow splicing into a pink yellow, and one of the tasks I had to do in this whole project was to determine, am I dealing with the right gauge wire? Is it the same? So I would use my caliper here and lock it in, and then I would go up to this one and measure it, and yep, most likely these are identical in conductor count and wire gauge equivalency of individual pairs of copper. So here we go. Keep bumping the camera, sorry about that. I'm looking through a magnifying glass as I do all my work. Here it is with a light. That's just the way I did it in the Navy. Excuse me. And you get to see more activity going on by doing this. You get to see things that normally your eyes are going to tire out and not see after this repetitive work I've done on. I'll tell you what, that wire can has really grown here. I've gotten a lot more wire. Hang on one second while I check out that noise outside. Okay, I'm back. Alright. Let me get my magnifying glass set up here and get back at it. What should we talk about? How do you strip? Sure, because it's not a bad discussion to have. Start with your largest, step down, step down, step down, and pay attention to your jaws at the end. And when you find a moment where there's a gap at the jaw, you're probably at the right spot. But I know I need to go down one, because that's my gap at the jaw. I'm sure you guys can see that. But what I do is I squeeze once, and what I do know is that I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. I'm going to loosen up and I'm going to turn it 90 degrees and squeeze again in the same little crevasse, and I might turn it 90 degrees in again and squeeze. And then on the bottom, You want to do that and then pull. And it's always good to eyeball the piece that you stripped off to see if there's a little hair of copper in there. It does a couple of things for you. It tells you, okay, is there just one little hair or there's several? And then you've told yourself that if there's 3 or 4, you're probably in the wrong stall. Right now I'm on the 18 gauge. So I'm in the correct one, and there's no copper hairs inside there. Strip this other one on the same one. I'm doing about 3/4 of an inch because I know it's happens to be working out for the type of splice I do for this gauge wire. Oops, it skipped on me. There we go. Notice what I got laid out. I've got a pretty long stretch of solder here. Yeah, it's a pretty old roll, but it's silver solder, whatever solder. And notice I got a sponge. It's got water in it. Got my alcohol in this little cap. I got my flux right here. All right. So let me get another brush. I think I'll just use this little paintbrush here for the alcohol. Now here's what's going on with the splice. What you want to do is you want to stare at your wire and see if there's any spiralness to it, and get rid of that by just grab it and pull, and it'll straighten them out. Get them straightish. And then what you want to do is you want to, I gotta see if you guys are even in frame. I'm gonna work right here. I think it's probably better. I'm going to adjust my magnifying glass. I'm going to intertangle these evenly. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm trying to feed them into one another. This doesn't take a lot of time. It's just that now that I'm videoing it, it'll take like a millennia. All right, so I've evenly intertangled them into like an X pattern. Ooh, came apart. Re-intertangle. There you go. Re-intertangle. And then I'm going to grab one side over here, and I'm going to collect it up and just hold it still while I have the other side sticking up. And I'm going to wrap around. Try not to pile it up. Try to evenly work it like a spring over top of itself tight. I'm going to grab a hold of this side. I'm going to twist this around the same way. Now, that's what you end up having right there. Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to pull it, but you don't want to pull like you're trying to rip it apart. What you want to do is pull it till you start seeing the copper spirals giving in. You'll see that happen. They'll start to try to become undone apart from one another. Just pull just pull until you see them start to react and you're done. What you've done is you've basically additionally tightened your splice some more, and you've created a little bit of a gap on either end. You've cleaned it up somewhat. Sorry about those hands. These are working hands. Now I'm using paste flux. I asked for liquid flux for Christmas, but I don't know. Liquid flux has its application, and this paste does too. Don't be afraid to use flux. I've got flux on there now. I'm going to come in with my soldering iron and I'm going to pick up some solder. But notice I've got a nice shiny tip during this entire work I've been doing. And every time you grab your soldering iron, no matter what you're doing, if it's traveling toward you or moving away from you, that sponge plays a role. Step one, clean it off. Why? Because it's been sitting there cooking while you haven't been using it. So you want to take off the ash to help clean the tip. Now that I've got a bunch of flux on here, I think I want to try to zoom in on the work area that you're going to see the soldering going on there. Tilt this a little bit. Need to find out where that splice is. It's way up there. Well, I hope that stays in frame. There we go. Right there? Okay. If I stay right there, we'll be in frame. Right over top of that stuff. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to grab me some solder. And I'm just going to chop it off. It'll walk right up on my tip. And let's see if you guys can see that. Yep. Now I've got solder waiting on my tip. I'll put a little bit more. All you should have to do is this. Oh, let me talk about safety. Okay, so now that I just now pulled solder up on my iron, I'm leaning over the work. And it's going to make some smoke. What I generally do is before I lean over and look, I happen to know to hold my breath. I will be breathing normal, but then when I'm going to apply the solder, I'll know to just hold my breath while the solder is there, because I'm generally looking over and through the magnifying glass and the smoke is coming up. I'll just not breathe during that moment. And then when I'm done soldering and moving the soldering iron away, I'll go ahead and continue consuming oxygen at my leisure. So here we go. All you should have to do is put your soldering iron right on the copper and the solder will walk right to and all the way around the entire circumference. You can touch it up if you like by moving around the conductor, your splice. But all you should have to do is this. With flux. Flux will help wick the solder onto your joint. I usually add a significantly more amount of heat than is necessary to ensure that the entire joint gets the solder into all the little turns. Now we've got a successful soldered joint. If you'll notice, it may appear to be a little dirty. So that's going to be the flux. Flux is a corrosive when it's allowed to just hang out on your connections. So you grab your alcohol, clean it up. I call this my COVID-19 alcohol because I don't know what planet I was on before, but before COVID, all you could ever find is like 70% isopropyl alcohol. But there's 91, so I'm like, that's perfect for soldering. It's like, that's like mil-spec grade stuff there. Alright, so I cleaned off all the flux. And there she be. Nice and shiny. Alright. So that's what we've achieved there is a low profile splice joint that's going to groom into a wire harness well, and it can also take the heat shrink application that you desire to clear it from any faults for how it's being installed and whatever. You can insulate it easily. It's not bulky, it's not ratty, it's professionally done, and it's going to be another part of the wire will break before this does. Not only is it secured with solder, but it's done up in a Western Union splice type format. So there we go. That was that. I'll get back to you in a second. I want to show you this wire can here. Alright, so I lied. I'm back again on soldering. Interesting little thing about soldering irons. I told you guys this is my soldering iron that I made a pistol grip out of a part of an old squirt gun. It was a toy. And but anyway, this is more ergonomic. I know I'm zoomed in, but I want to show you the splice for this special situation. When you have I call this a normal pencil iron. And so if you have just a normal pencil soldering iron, I just noticed in the camera this soldering iron looks shorter than what it is in reality. I wonder if I got a setting weird. Alright, so this pencil iron, and it's got my homemade tip on it. And I think it's the largest tip I have. I might be wrong. No, yeah, it is my largest tip. You might be dealing with a situation where the wire is acting like it's not wanting to how do I put this? The wire is not accepting the solder because it's like your instinct tells you that your soldering iron is not putting out enough heat. I'll show you how to work around that. Alright, same procedure. The previous wire that I spliced was telling me it was stripping on 18 gauge, but this is stripping at 16. Keep checking to make sure I'm not. Yeah, I gotta stay in frame. Maybe I should just tilt a little bit. How about them apples? Stay right in front, right in here, Scott. Alright. Telling me this is 16 gauge. I'm stripping about 3/4 of an inch off. There we go. Find my other. Just extending this brown white by soldering more brown whites. Oh, come on. There we go. Off and on frame, but my apologies. Let's see, there we go. So I'm going to stick to the same game plan. Straighten everybody out. Evenly intertangle everything. Evenly intertangled. Dress everybody. See that? Oh. Gather these guys up on the left. Hold them while I spin these guys around. Don't spin your copper hairs over top of your insulation. You want to keep it grouped. Now this splice is going to be a little bit more chubby than the previous ones. Wow, it's a thicker gauge wire. But at the end of the day, proportionally, it's going to be about the same. I got a rogue hair there. Just going to drip, massage him around a little bit. There we go. Add some flux. This is a thicker gauge, and the purpose of this little extra tidbit is to, what do you do when your soldering iron is, you put solder on the splice, and suddenly now your soldering iron is no longer melting the solder. The copper in the copper wire itself is actually needing you to stay on it longer to heat up further under the insulation so that your heat point is able to become hotter. I don't have a way to put a heat sink alligator clips on either side of these, so I'll show you what I do. Make 2 passes on these kinds of splices. My soldering iron, get me some solder. Get a very generous amount of solder. As a matter of fact, as much as this tip will hold. Well, I hope you hold that much. Okay, so I'll turn my fan off over there. I forgot I left it on. So this splice here actually looks a little weird because you can see that looks like it's just not filled up yet. It's not done. Well, that's the facts, you know. You need to make a second pass at it. So what I'll do is I will simply add more flux. Don't be afraid of your flux. Follow all the precautions and ignore all the unsafe things I'm doing. Alright, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to collect up maybe 1.5 inches worth of solder again. And I'm going to balancing act, bring it over, lay it in there. And what I'm going to end up with is a better looking result. That looks like more of a more proper looking solder splice. Now that insulation starts getting warm, but if you've got good calluses on your fingertips, you can ride the heat wave for a little bit, like I'm doing. Alright, so this looks more proper. A little bit of alcohol. Just pour me some alcohol on the table there. Clean that up. That's more than suitable and acceptable. Okay. So there we go. It filled up all the little turns and all that. I could go a round 3 and I would add flux, grab my soldering iron, go to the sponge, wipe it off, pick up about another inch of solder. But right now that's profiled. It's profiled to where I know that it's a good idea to let well enough alone. Let it be. All right, hang tight. All right, guys. The wire can adding wire is complete. I ended up drilling. I had one set of holes around the perimeter. I ended up drilling another two rows of holes. I don't even know how I could demonstrate that, but basically I used this tool right here to go from the center and scribe a circle, and then I drilled, I think it was 9/32. I believe that's what it was. Let me double check that. What did I pick as an optimum hole size? Wow. Meter leads. It might have been 5 30 seconds. I'm sorry. 5 30 seconds. Two additional rows of holes. I think we can. Yeah, who cares? Get an outer row of holes, a second row, and a third row. And that's the wire that I have right there. I'm going to try to get everything back in the can. If it doesn't fit, I may upgrade to a smaller version of a kitty litter can. I've got a smaller kitty litter can I can redo this in. Because I'm always interested in having wire around of the proper color and the right gauge. So, this might look like a tangled mess. I want to see if I can get everybody back. I'm going to see if I can get everybody back into the original container. We're doing this together. I haven't tried this yet. Let's see if I can spiral it up. See how much of a pain in the butt this is going to be. Okay. I'm running out of hand. I'm close. There. Oh my goodness. That's a lot of wire. Okay. Cram this white wire in there and a blue. Feeding these in by loops in the order in which they were wrapped. That's not too hard at all, actually. Going in a lot easier than I thought. thread's not wanting to go on. Okay. There we go. I got a bunch more wire. Like we say in Dad's garage. Might need that for something one day. You all take care. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all that good stuff. See ya.